early in the 20th century, Ernest Holmes says, with the development of the larger brain in the human, mind came forth anew. We need to learn how to free ourselves from the dominion of instinctual functions of the nervous. There are so many people who think the brain is all there is, that the brain gives rise to the mind. Some scientists say it is the brain that gives rise to the mind. But more and more scientists are saying, no, that's not the truth. That's not the way it is. That the mind gives rise to the brain. Without the mind, there is no brain. And of course, we believe in there's only one mind. So if there's only one mind, then that mind is what has given rise to the brain. That mind is what we call God. Late in the 19th century, the scientists began to study the brain. And then, at that point, they all believed that the brain was rigid, inflexible. But late in the 20th century, scientists began to realize it's not the way it is. But the truth is that the brain is flexible. It's like silly putty. Have you ever played with silly putty? Or you watched your children play with silly putty, and you can manipulate that putty into all different kinds of shapes and sizes. You can stretch it out. You can puff it up. You can mold it to fit, mold it to become whatever it is that you want it to become. This is the way our brains are. This is what scientists today are realizing, that our brains are moldable, they're malleable, they're plastic. This is the science called neuroplasticity, and this is the science that the brain can become whatever we want it to become. And what that means for you and for me is that no matter what our age, we can train our brain, we can mold our brain. And in the molding of our brain, that we are molding our whole life. Because one of the things I've learned is that the brain wants to feel good, just like we want to feel good. Just like we were born to feel good. But most of the time, what we feed our brain makes it feel bad. It makes it feel negative. And when we are thinking thoughts of negativity, we are actually damaging our brains. Late in the 20th century, scientists began to do research on the brain of people who meditate on a regular basis. And by regular basis, I mean at least every day, at least an hour a day, or even 15 minutes a day. They discovered that meditation actually changes the brain. They could see in the wavelengths differences in the brain. They can see what spiritual enterprises do for the brain, and they can see that it enhances the brain. And the other discovery they made is that when you think about God, anything that we associate with God, it changes your brain as well. And here is the important thing. If you think about God as being loving and supportive, it enhances your brain. It makes your brain feel better. And therefore, it enhances your life. But if you think that God is a judgmental, vindictive God who doles out rewards and punishments, that actually damages your brain. So all of us who grew up believing that God was a judgmental God and that we better be good or we're going to be punished, our brains have suffered for that. Not just our lives, but our brains. Our brains suffer when we go to the negative. And here's another discovery. That how often you think about God, the attributes of God, affects your brain. So if you want to have a healthy life, if you want to have a healthy brain, then I would suggest you start thinking about things that make you feel good. If you think when you look outside and you see a beautiful sunset and that makes you feel good, then I suggest that you start looking at more sunsets. Or if you can sit and watch, by the way, Joel saw the first hummer yesterday. If you sit and watch the hummingbirds and they feel good, they make you feel good, you feel joy when you see a hummingbird flitting around, then I suggest you do more hummingbird watching. Because they make your brain feel good. And your brain goes where you want it to go. This is the beauty of living in this time, because we are learning more and more about what makes us feel good, makes our lives better. And it can actually add to the length of our lives. So if you want to live a long and happy life, then I suggest you start spending time and energy on things that make you feel good. And look for them. If you can't find anything to make you feel good, then start looking for things. What is it that makes you feel good? Start thinking about it, and start looking for them, and start doing them. There is a circuitous loop between your upper and your lower brain. And the upper brain is the one that leads us to a state of higher consciousness. And it is the lower brain, the primitive, the older brain, that makes us react in fear to things, that causes us to be suspicious and fearful. But there is a loop that goes between the upper and the lower brain, and that's the part that's malleable. And so that as the more that you feed your brain good things, the more you feed it good things, you know when you feed your body good food, how your body responds to it. You know how your body responds when you eat something that isn't so good. The other day, I decided I wanted a hamburger. You know, I don't eat meat, so that left me with a veggie burger. So I had a veggie burger. And of course, when I have a burger, I have to have French fries. You know, they just go hand in hand. And you can't have one without the other, Carolyn. You know, that's just the way it is. So I had a veggie burger and I had French fries. And an hour later, I felt like I wanted to lie down to take a nap. And what I realized is the combination of the French fries and the white bread on the bun does not do my body good. And I felt the effects. And this is the way it is with our brains. When we feed it good food, whether it's actual food or if it's something beautiful to behold or to think about, it makes us feel good all over. And I don't know about you, but I just want to feel good. I want to feel so good that I'm willing to forego the burgers from now on. Unless I can have some brown bread. The other part of this is it's a choice. You know, we talk about choice in Science of Mind frequently. We say we have the choice to decide. And it's the same thing with our brains. We have the choice. If we're going to feel good, we're going to feed our mind, our brains, good food, or we're going to continue on the path that we've been going on the last few years, and we just keep going down and down and down. But it's always a choice that we get to make, and that's the wonderful thing about it. I want to give you an example of how your brain responds. This lower primitive brain. I have a terrible phobia about snakes. I've tried over the years to get over it. And I know what I can do to get over it. But when I thought about what it was it would take to get over it, I decided it wasn't worth it. I would just stay away from snakes as much as possible. But this is what happens to me when I see a snake, or if I even see a picture of a snake. I mean, just a picture of a snake. Well, or on TV, and all of a sudden there comes a screen full of snakes. I am so fearful of snakes that my mind, my brain shuts down. First of all, I see the snake, or I see the picture of the snake. And I go automatically into fear. It's an automatic response for me, and that's my primitive brain response. And this primitive brain creates a chemical reaction in my brain. And then my hormones kick And the hormones rush into my bloodstream and causes my heart to start racing. This morning when I was thinking about this, I had this picture. Now just picture this in your mind. My heart is racing. Can you just see this? A heart racing down the street, a heart with little bitty feet racing down the street, being chased by a snake. A great big snake, or, probably it isn't so big, it's probably a little teeny snake. But can you just see that my heart racing down the street chased by this little teeny snake? That's how silly sometimes my fear is. When my heart starts racing and then my blood pressure rises, and when all this is happening, my higher brain just blacks out. It can't think because I've got all this other stuff going on in my body, all because I saw a picture of a snake, and all of a sudden, everything just falls apart. I am not rational when I see a snake or a picture of a snake. I just lose all rationale. My brain is running my mind. And when your brain is running your mind, you're not rational. This is a very good example of how our brains use us. And the beauty of this is, the hope is that we can turn this around. We can begin to use our brains instead of our brains using us. And this is what I love about this, is that I learned that I can be in control. I don't have to let that picture run my life. I don't have to let anything that I'm afraid of. It doesn't matter if it's a picture of a snake, or if it's a fear of a disease, or if it's a fear of being impoverished, or if it's a fear of failure, or if it's a fear of being rejected. Whatever our fears are, and we all have lots of fears if we're honest with ourselves, whatever those fears are, we don't have to let them run our lives. We can be in control. And once more, it's a choice. But first we have to be aware of it. And this is where our hope is. Once we are aware, first of all, that we have this fear, and that we have a choice. We can let the fear run our lives, or we can choose to overcome the fear. And the way you do this is that you will become aware of it. You become aware that you have the fear. When we have a fear, we're stuck in that fear. And once we become aware of it, then we can make the first step in becoming unstuck. And awareness is the first step. Know that you can be in control of your brain. You don't have to let your brains run your life. Know that you can be in control. And then make the determination of how you want to live. What do you want your life to look like? And then direct your brain in the direction that you want it to go. And watch your life follow. I guarantee this. I truly guarantee it. If you will do all of this, if you become aware of what the areas in your life where your brain is leading you, and then realize that you can take control if you want to. Some of us don't. Some of us kind of like just letting our brains lead us. It's a really good excuse for where we are in our lives. And then determine how you want to live. Some of us just live by default. But you can make the determination and then direct your brain in the direction that you want. Direct your brain in the direction that you choose. You choose. This is the beauty of our teaching. We have the choice. We know we have the choice. And we can change things immediately at any time by choosing what we want. You can choose whether your brain runs your life or your mind runs your life. You get to choose.